Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. This is the continuation of UPSC Prelims crash course. And this is the session on ecology and environment. And there will be two sessions on ecology and environment. And this is the first among that. Now, before starting the session on ecology and environment, now what type of questions you expect in the UPSC examination? So in the UPSC examination, the questions which are there from ecology and environment will be based on facts. They will be based on concepts, any concepts which are relevant, as well as application in the context of ecology, pollution, environmental concern. And also more amount of current affairs will be asked there. Now when we talk about the current affairs with reference to facts, you have to focus on the places which are in the news. At least 1.5 years to 2 years. Now, which places you have to identify? Places are nothing but the national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserves, or sometimes ecological sensitive zones, rivers, lakes, water bodies, etc. So, all these which are concerned with the environment. So, you can expect questions from these places. Apart from that, we also come across certain people who have contributed in the context of ecology and environment or with reference to the concern of pollution or any such issues. So we have to focus on the peoples or the persons in the news. Right? And apart from that, you have to focus on reports which have been released by important institutions. So these three sectors you have to remember. Then, when you're reading about the factual parts, you have to understand and make reference of all the acts which are relevant for ecology and environment concern, like Wildlife Act of 1972, Forest Act and Forest Amendment Act. It may be with reference to the recent changes which have been introduced or their concern with the news perspective. It may be Forest Dwellers Act or the changes which have been introduced to apply certain international conventions there. So you have to be good enough in understanding the acts. Then we have to focus on conventions, important conventions. Along with the conventions, their conference of parties, which are held either annually, once in 2 years, or once in 3 years, and their outcomes. They are very important when they ask in the statements. So acts are important, conventions are important, and certain protocols are there. So these protocols are also important when we read the conventions, like Montreal Protocol, Nagoya Protocol. So there may be questions from protocols also there. Apart from these, we come across innovations or cutting edge technologies which have been introduced in the context of either pollution concern or say climatic path. Like we talk about something called as carbon sequestration. So there we find a geological sequestration is done by using many methodologies. So some innovations have been introduced there as a part of carbon neutrality. So such innovations, such methodologies which are there in the news, they will be asked in the prelims questions, right? And you have to always revise all the updated things in these concerns. Plus the institutions which are associated with the ecology and environment, including the reports which have been given by them. So these becomes the important parts which you have to be focused while writing the examination or preparing before entering into the examination hall. Now keeping these things in the mind, I'll be taking up the first session. The first question is, consider the following statements regarding Antarctica ozone depletion. So here it is about ozone depletion, but with reference to Antarctica, that is the southern pole. Right. Now here it says the polar vortex plays an important role with the absence of nacreous cloud, intrusion of air from the mesosphere, multilateral fund. So it talks about a fund, multilateral fund. Then it also talks about a fund called as Global Environment Facility. So 4 statements are there. Now why this ozone depletion is important or relevant for the 2024. Now, when we talk about the data which are given with reference to 2023 Antarctica ozone hole depletion, the research papers, the datas, they have said that the ozone hole depletion in Antarctica is the 12th largest ozone hole which has been recorded since from 1979. Right. Now, apart from that, they have also said that one of the reasons for this event is the Hunga-Tunga volcanic eruption. The Hunga-Tunga volcanic eruption. Now here you should remember that this Hunga-Tunga volcanic eruption is an example of phreatic explosion. Now what is phreatic explosion? Phreatic explosion is a type of volcanic eruption where the magma comes in contact with the water and that water becomes superheated steam and that gives a huge violent explosion, and this explosion is responsible for adding large amount of water vapor, gases and other particles to the Earth's atmosphere. So here also it added large amount of the dust particles, water vapor to the atmosphere. Now, the eruption was so strong, so violent that the water vapor reached to the second layer of the Earth's atmosphere. It is not only the first, it reached to the second layer of Earth's atmosphere called as the stratosphere. The first layer is troposphere and the second layer is called as stratosphere. So it reached to that. Now, if this water vapor is found in the first layer, that is in the troposphere, this water vapor can lead to the formation of the clouds which can bring precipitation. But the moment when it reaches to the second layer, that is the stratosphere, it behaves differently. So in the second layer, the water vapor do not form any clouds. So it forms no clouds or no rain. Apart from that, it is also a greenhouse gas. And this water vapor in the second layer is responsible for a chemical reaction which destroys ozone. Responsible for chemical reaction which destroys the ozone which is present in the stratosphere. And that is why the research papers and some of the data, they have suggested that this volcanic eruption is one of the reasons for the 12th largest ozone hole depletion in Antarctica. So that's why in this regard, the ozone hole depletion in Antarctica is important. Now, when we talk about the ozone, we have two types of ozone. One ozone is at the ground level, and this ozone which is found in the ground level is referred as a pollutant which can create respiratory disease. And this is formed when we find the sun's radiations or in the presence of sun's radiations, nitrous oxides or nitrogen oxides, they react with the volatile organic compounds. And they create the ground ozone, which is a pollutant. But in this question, we are talking about the ozone which is found at altitude, which is at the height, that is the second layer of Earth's atmosphere, that is stratosphere. And this is referred as good ozone, which prevents us from harmful ultraviolet radiation. Now, the average thickness of this, which is important to prevent us from ultraviolet radiation, is around 300 Dobson units. 300 Dobson units. Right. Now, if this thickness is reduced, then we say it is ozone depletion. Sometimes due to ozone depleting substances, the thickness of this ozone reduces to around say 220 or 200 Dobson units. Then we refer that as ozone depletion. Right. And this ozone depletion is seen in different proportion in different parts based on the concentration of ozone depleting substances in that areas. And generally, when we talk about ozone in the second layer, it is naturally formed and naturally dissociates also. which is referred as a Chapman cycle. But due to the introduction of ozone depleting substances, we find that this thickness is not being maintained. It is seen that in some areas it is 200, some areas it is around 220 Dobson units, which is referred as a concept of ozone depletion. This is found in all the part of the earth. But in the question we talk about the ozone depletion in Antarctica. Now the ozone depletion in Antarctica is totally different from what you find in elsewhere on the earth's surface. Now the major reason for Antarctica ozone depletion is associated with certain atmospheric phenomenon and also a chemical reactions which takes place there. Right. So that's why the Antarctica ozone hole depletion is completely different from what we find in other parts of the earth because of these two. And here it is always associated with the three factors which are relevant for Antarctica ozone depletion. The first one is the role of jet stream. The second one is what we refer that as polar vortex, a stratospheric cloud which is found along with the polar vortex, and this polar vortex creating a cloud called as polar stratospheric clouds, PSC. Right. Now these three plays an important role in the context of ozone depletion in Antarctica. Now polar vortex is air which is revolving above the Earth's North Pole and South Pole with low pressure center. And this is surrounded by a polar jet stream in the northern hemisphere as well as southern hemisphere. Then this polar vortex is one of the reasons for formation of polar stratospheric clouds. Now you should understand this. Polar stratospheric cloud is also referred as nacreous cloud, or it is also called as mother of pearl cloud. Now this cloud is non-rain bearing cloud. It do not provide any type of rainfall. But this cloud is associated with ozone depletion. And the condition for formation of polar stratospheric cloud is when the temperature is below -78 degrees centigrade. It forms only when the temperature is below -78 degree centigrade. Generally, this is during the winter season. Right. Now, these things you should remember. One is the role of jet stream, polar vortex, and then polar stratospheric clouds, which plays an important role in the context of Antarctica. Now, along with that, if you see the land configuration of Antarctica, which consists of a land area or a continent. Above that, the ice deposit is there, and surrounding is water bodies. So because of this land configuration, plus other factors, the jet stream which is there in the Antarctica, that is polar jet stream. In the winter season, it is generally strong jet stream. Now the jet stream, when it is strong, it always try to follow the straight path. Now if the jet stream is weak, then it will move with meanders or the loops. So this is atmospheric phenomenon plus certain part. Now we'll try to link all this with understanding of why the Antarctica ozone depletion is seen. Right. Now, due to apparent shifting of the sun, when the sun moves to the northern hemisphere in the Antarctica, it experiences winter condition. And during that, the polar vortex, which is air which is rotating or revolving at higher altitude in the southern hemisphere. So this polar vortex is consolidated or confined by a strong jet stream. In Antarctica. Right. Now this strong jet stream do not allow the polar vortex to spread, and that is the reason why this polar vortex, the temperature of that decreases to -78 degrees centigrade or lesser than that. Now during this condition, the air which has already carried the ozone depleting substances like chlorine, bromine, etc. So these chlorine, bromine, etc. they combine along with the cold air, and that leads to the formation of a cloud called as polar stratospheric cloud during the winter season. And this is in the Antarctica because of land configuration and other factors where the temperature decreases to minus 78 degrees centigrade during the winter season. Right. Now, apparently when the sun starts making its shift towards the south, so during that, from the month of July, August, slowly the temperature in the southern hemisphere increases. And this increasing of the temperature do not make the condition to keep minus 78. So which makes the dissociation of the polar stratospheric clouds. Dissociation of the polar stratospheric clouds. And this dissociation of the polar stratospheric clouds releases the chlorine and bromine which were there. And they become chemically reactive. And they are responsible for the ozone depletion in Antarctica. During the month of, it starts generally from the month of August, and in the month of September, October and November, it reaches to the highest level. Right, September, October and November. So in this, it reaches to the maximum level and it recovers by December or January. So this is how the ozone depletion is seen in the context of Antarctica. And the three factors are the polar vortex, jet stream, and the polar stratospheric clouds. Right. Now, keeping these things in the mind, we'll try to analyze and answer the statements. The polar vortex plays an important role along with the absence of nacreous cloud. Now here, the nacreous cloud plays an important role. It is also referred as polar stratospheric cloud or mother of pearl cloud. So the first statement is wrong. Now, along with the study of the phreatic explosion, they also made a reference that a part of an air which is descending from the mesosphere is also responsible for ozone depletion. Now, much research is required in that, much studies is required in that, why it behaves like that. But they have already found that a part of an air which is descending from the mesosphere is something which is creating the chemical actions which is responsible for ozone depletion. So the second statement is correct here. Now, multilateral fund is introduced for effective implementation of Kigali Amendment to provide financial. Now, you have to understand that this multilateral fund is associated with Montreal Protocol. So it provides technical and financial assistance to the developing countries which have ratified the Montreal Protocol. So this multilateral fund is associated with Montreal Protocol, not with the Kigali Amendment. So the third statement is wrong. Then Global Environment Facility provides financial assistance and technical assistance to reduce ODS. Now, Global Environment Facility, it is also a fund which provide financial assistance to 5 conventions, but not to the Montreal Protocol or to the ozone depletion part. So hence, the fourth statement is also wrong. So here, only one statement is correct. Option B is correct. Now, sometimes they may ask funds with reference to certain criteria. Sometimes they may ask funds and conventions. Right. Now, this is about the first question. Now, we move on to the second question. Next. It is a multilateral family of funds established in the year of 1992 Rio Earth Summit. A unique partnership of 18 agencies. It is a financial mechanism, funding mechanism for 5 major international environmental convention. It is jointly managed by UNDP, UNEP and World Bank. Now this was set up in the Earth Summit or Rio Summit. Now this fund, it provides financial assistance to 5 conventions. And to remember those 5 conventions, 3 conventions of Earth Summit. They are the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, plus Convention on Conservation of Biodiversity, CBD, plus United Nations Convention for Combating Desertification, UNCCD, desertification. Along with that, it also provides financial assistance to 2 pollutants. One is Minamata Convention regarding mercury pollution, And another one is the Stockholm Convention regarding persistent organic pollutant. Stockholm Convention, persistent organic pollutant, right? So this is about the Global Environment Facility. Now, multilateral fund, as I told, it is associated with Montreal Protocol. And Environment Fund, it is set up, or it was set up in the year 1973. And this plays an important role to help and support United Nations Environment Program. And Adaptation Fund is also very important. Adaptation Fund was set up in the year 2001, and it is associated with Kyoto Protocol. Kyoto Protocol. Now, this Adaptation Fund provides financial assistance to the vulnerable communities or vulnerable countries, coastal communities, poor countries to adapt in the context of climate change. Now, this fund, initially the contribution to the fund was given by 2% of the proceedings by selling the carbon credits called as certified emission reduction. And these certified emission reductions are the carbon credits which are traded in clean development mechanism. Now, what is clean development mechanism? It is a trade between a developed country and developing country. So 2% of the proceedings from the selling of certified emission reductions during CDM was the contribution. Later, voluntary contributions were also added to that. Right. So this is about the Adaptation Fund. Always remember these funds when they originate and what are their major objectives. So here B is the correct option. Now moving down to the next question. It is a type of relation where the presence of one species has a negative effect on the another, but the first species is unaffected. Select the correct options from the following. Now it talks about ecological relations between different species. Now these ecological relations can be positive or they can be negative. Positive means which provides benefit to single species or both the species, or negative where one species is harmed. So it can be both type of ecological relations. Now here the question demands where the presence of one species has a negative effect on another, but the first species is unaffected. So it is a type of negative relation. Now this is something, take an example of the grasses and the herds of elephant. Grassland is there. Then herds of elephant, that is group of elephants. Now these elephant herds, when they move on the grasslands, now these grasslands or the grasses will get destroyed, but the elephants are unaffected. Now such type of relationship like elephant and the grasses, we refer them as amensalism. We refer that as amensalism. Now, what is proto-cooperation? Now, when you are reading proto-cooperation and commensalism, so both are positive type of relationship. Now, proto-cooperation is a type of relation. Again, take an example of crocodile and a bird. Crocodile and a bird. Now, when the bird sits on the mouth of crocodile, it will eat the parasites. So the bird will get the food and the crocodile will get relief from the parasites. So both will get benefit. Both will get benefit from each other. But the survival of crocodile doesn't depend on the bird, and the survival of the bird doesn't depend on the crocodile. So both can independently survive without their presence. And such type of relationships which benefits when they come in close to each other, we refer that as proto-cooperation. Then commensalism. Commensalism, when you read that, take an example of whale and barnacle. Now barnacle is a small crustacean. It gets attached to the whale. Now when the whale moves, these barnacles, they get the locomotion along with the whale. These barnacles will not harm the whale. Whale is not affected by the attachment of the barnacles, but the barnacles will get a food. They will get the locomotion. So hence, here the barnacles are benefited, whales is neither benefiting nor it is harmed. So such relation where one organism gets benefit, the other organism is neither harmed nor benefited, we refer that as commensalism. Right. And parasitism is where one species benefits and other is harmed. Where we talk about the human being and a mosquito, we refer that as a parasitism. Right. So this is C. Commensalism is the correct option. Now, consider the following statements regarding the State of Forest Report 2021. Now, the State of Forest Report is biennial. It means that it is released once in 2 years. Now, this is released by Forest Survey of India. And the concerned ministries, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Now, the first report was released in the year 1987. Now, when they release the data, they use the term called as forest cover. So they don't use the term forest area. They use the term forest cover instead of the forest area. Now, forest area is having legal status. That is the forest which is mentioned in the government datas. But the forest cover is the term which is used by the State of Forest reports. That is any unit area, 1 hectare area, where 10% of the tree canopy is there, minimum 10%. We refer that as forest covers. Right. So forest cover is the term used by the State of Forest report. Now this is biennial and the first report was in 1987. Right. Now the data which was given in the year 2021, some statements of that. It says that 17 states and union territories have below 33% of the geographical area under the forest cover as per the 2021 data. Now here, if you are reading the data carefully, the data says that 17 states and union territories have above 33%. So it is not below, it is above. So the first statement is wrong. Out of the total forest cover, understand here, they use the term cover. They don't use the term forest area. Forest cover, percentage of geographical area of open forest is more than moderately dense forest. Now, if you take a data of India, the moderate and open forest. The open forest and moderate forest, the datas, they say that there is a very slight difference in the datas. The open forest has 9.34% and the moderate has 9.33%. 9.33%. Very slight changes there. So hence the second statement is correct. 9.34 open forest. Then among the major cities, Mumbai has the largest forest cover. Now this is also the wrong statement. If you see the cities and their forest cover, the largest cover is in Delhi, followed by Mumbai, and then followed by Bangalore. So the third statement is also wrong. Then the forest cover of the northeastern states have shown moderate decrease compared to the last report. Now this is a very factual data and it is very true. So second statement and fourth statements are correct here. Very factual. Now along with that, sometimes they may ask which of the states where the percentage of the forest cover has been increased. Which are the states where the mangroves have increased, where we find carbon stock has been increased, where the carbon sink is increased. Now this is where the factual data with the statements becomes complicated in the context of examination. Right. Then consider the following regarding the seer involved in ecological succession. Now when we talk about ecological succession is any ecosystem, when it changes from A to B, it is a systematic change of an ecosystem. It is not haphazard. Systematic, where its characteristics also changes. Community also changes. It also modifies all the characteristics. So such systematic change or one ecosystem is replaced by another, we refer that as ecological succession. And this always consists of a series which includes nudation, followed by invasion, Then third one is initially the species cooperate, but later when there is scarcity, they start competing. So cooperation and competing for the resources. And after the competition, they create stabilization. That is the stable community. Stabilization. That is stable community. Right. So this is how the process is seen. Nudation, invasion, cooperation, and competition, then stabilization. Now this this ecological succession can be two types. It can be primary succession or it can be secondary succession. So if it is creating for the first time, then we refer that as primary succession. If it is for second time, third time, 10th time or nth time also, we refer that as secondary succession. So only two types of successions are there. Now this series which is involved, systematic series which is involved, we refer that as seer. Seer. Now if it is primary, then we refer that as pre-seer. And if it is secondary, then we refer that as sub-seer. Sub-seer. So this is about ecological succession. Now, this ecological succession takes place in any part. It can be in the saline water, it can be on the rock surface, or it can be in the desert areas. So where they have taken place, where the seer has occurred, so they name them as per that. And hence, if you see the questions and the objectives given here. Zero seer, it is succession in the dry habitat, where the one ecosystem is replaced in the dry habitat. Senile, succession of microorganisms on dead matter. Eoseer, development of vegetation in an area. Lithoseer, succession on a bare rock surface. Now, here if you see all these, sometimes they may ask and match the following. So all the four statements are correct here. All the four statements are correct here. Right. So it is about ecological succession. Right. So you should be knowing these terms: primary, secondary, nudation, invasion, cooperation and competition, and the characteristics of ecological succession. Right. Now, consider the following statements regarding the Kowari, which is in the news. Now, what is this Kowari and what are the concerns associated with that? Now, when you are reading the content for your examination, in the current affairs, sometimes there are certain species which have changed their IUCN characteristics or which have changed their categories. Like they have moved from vulnerable to endangered, critically endangered to endangered one. So they have changed their categories. So such type of species can be asked in the examination. Now this is with reference to the Kowari. Right. Now this Kowari is a marsupial. It is a marsupial and it is carnivorous marsupial. Marsupial. Right. Now the moment when we say marsupial, it means that it has to be seen in the other side of an imaginary line which has been drawn. Now sometimes they may ask a question on that. So this line which makes the faunal demarcation is referred as Weber line or Wallace line. So we come across a line called as Wallace line or Weber line. A faunal division. So this is an imaginary line which separates the marsupials from non-marsupials. The Asian with Australian part. Right. So marsupials are there in the Australian sides. Cats, tigers, etc. They are non-marsupials in the Asian side. And this is that imaginary lines which demarcates the faunal division. Faunal division. Hence this carnivorous marsupial, it is found in the Australian stony desert. In Australia, stony desert. The treeless deserts. And these deserts, they are referred as, or this habitat of the Kowaris, which is treeless, they are referred as gibber plains. Gibber plains. Right. So one is, it is a carnivorous marsupial, Australia, stony deserts, and they are referred as gibber plains. Now there was a threat to these species because of climate change, deforestation, fires, etc. and hence the number of this carnivorous marsupial decrease. And that is the reason why in the November month of 2023, its status has been classified or adjusted in IUCN Red List from vulnerable to endangered. It has been categorized from vulnerable to endangered. Right. Apart from that, during the winter season, when there is a shortage of food or when there extreme weather conditions are there, so these species also makes adaptation, where they enter into state of dormancy. So generally when you read the state of dormancy, we talk about hibernation, estivation, etc., brumation, etc. Now here it undergoes state of dormancy for a short period of a time in the winter season, and that state of dormancy where it reduces its respiratory, breathing and physical activity so that it can conserve the energy is referred as torpor. So this is all about the species. Right. Now let's check the questions. Consider the following statement about or regarding the Kowari. It is a new species of squirrel found in Amazon forest. So it is stony forests of Australia. It is a herbivorous marsupial. It is a carnivorous marsupial, pouched animal. Marsupial means pouched animal. And here you should remember the Weber line or the Wallace line. They go into state of torpor during the winter season. So the third statement is correct. They are classified as vulnerable in IUCN Red List. So recently their category have been changed from vulnerable to endangered. Amazon forest fires and drought pose major threat to these species. Right. Now this is also the wrong statement. So here only one statement is true. Only one statement is true. Right. Now moving down to the next one. Consider the following statements about the global cooling pledge. One of the outcomes of COP28. Now COP28, Conference of Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It was hosted by UAE. And many important outcomes are there. It can be with reference to global cooling pledge, or it can be a new financial instrument which has been introduced, which is referred as new collective quantified goals. Right. And also it is a session where we find the loss and damage fund was also introduced. So hence it's a very important convention with reference to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Now here the concern question, it talks about the global cooling pledge. Right. So here if you see the statements, it is an initiative of European Union. It is an initiation of UAE, not the European Union. Then India is not a signatory. It is also pledged financial assistance. Right. Now India is not only a signatory, it also pledged the financial assistance. Now, if you read the current affairs or PIBs, it is very systematically highlighted that India is not a signatory, and when it is not a signatory, then how it can make financial assistance. Right. Commits the countries to reduce their cooling emission by at least 68% of 2050. So this is the correct statement. Then to increase the global average efficiency of new air conditioners, new air conditions, maybe by innovation, maybe by adding the technologies. So they want to increase the efficiency of the air conditioners, not by 30 but by 50%. It has to be increased by 50%. So hence the fourth statement is also wrong. So in this context, only one statement is correct here. A global pledge. A global pledge. Right. Now, data in climate resilient agriculture. The data driven digital public good is initiative of. Now, before moving down to this question, understand that the impact of climate change and global warming is seen in all the sectors, and it is more effectively seen in the agriculture sector. In the agriculture sector, right? And what all the impacts are there? In the agriculture sector, every every year globally there is a loss of more than $2 billion alone in the agriculture. Globally, $2 billion loss is there. It is mainly due to the pest attacks. It is due to disease, which is seen in the agriculture sector, or migratory pests like locusts, which are there. Because during the increased temperature, the defensive mechanism of the agricultural crops or vegetables, they decreases. Apart from that, when we talk about heat waves, so when the heat waves are there, so these heat waves can make a problem with reference to the sunburn to the horticulture crops or the fruits, or they develop the cracks. Cold waves can also trigger that. Droughts, forest fires. So all these are associated with huge loss to the farming communities. It can be drought, it can be flood, it can be heat waves, it can be cold waves, or it is associated with decrease in the yield also. Take an example of the wheat. As wheat is a temperate crop, due to increase in the temperature, the yield in the wheat has been decreased to 15 to 20%. So there has been substantial loss in the agriculture sector. Apart from that, we know that the population of the globe is increasing. So as the population is increasing, there is a threat to the agriculture productivity or production. So that can create many problems to the farming communities. One direct thing is regarding their income. Second one is food scarcity. There will be food scarcity. So hence, in this regard, we need to focus on agricultural crops which can resist to the climate change or which can recover quickly to the impact of droughts, etc. And such types of crops, we refer them as resilience. So hence, a memorandum of understanding, MOU, has been signed between UNDP and NABARD in India to develop the DICRA platform. And this platform is very important to boost climate resilient agriculture. In India. Resistance or recover quickly. Apart from that, this platform also gives about, or it also shares the information of the public finance in the agriculture. It gives the data about the public finance which is given for agriculture. It also uses cutting edge technology, that is latest technology. Cutting edge technology or latest technology to identify the cropping patterns so that they can resist them in the context of climate change. In the cropping patterns or farms. Right. So hence, this data in climate resilient agriculture or DICRA is very important in this regard. Now, apart from that, India has also moved towards more growth and development of millets. And we have celebrated 2018 as National Year of Millets. And also we are celebrating the International Year of Millets so that we can highlight the significance and importance of the millets. Now, the present aspect is about agriculture and its relevance, because as the population is increasing due to unplanned urbanization and rapid industrialization, the carrying capacity of all the ecosystems are diminishing. So generally we say that the ecological footprints are increasing, the biocapacities are decreasing. I'm repeating, the ecological footprints are increasing and the biocapacities are decreasing. So hence there has been an alarming the references of the earth part, right? So generally we say overshoot day, right? So the alarming dates are seen in the earth's overshoot day due to increasing of the ecological footprints. Now this is one of the major cause of concern, because if the population is increasing and the productivity of agriculture, production and productivity, if they are diminishing, then they will create a huge problem with food security along with malnutrition. And this is very clearly visible in many reports, including hunger report and other others, right? So malnutrition is dominating in all the poor and developing countries. Right. Now, consider the following statements regarding the graded response action plan. Now, with reference to graded response action plan, so this is something which is associated with the intervention of Supreme Court. Supreme Court suggested in the year 2016 that the Delhi should develop an emergency plan in the context of the pollution which is seen there. Right. And with reference to the Supreme Court, the graded response action plan was introduced in the year 2017. I'm not talking in detail about that. I'm just talking about this graded response action plan is in response to the Supreme Court's suggestion. And initially when it was introduced in the year 2017, it took only the criteria of particulate matter 10 and particulate matter 2.5. Only these two parameters were there. And it was implemented only when the conditions become worst. And it is implemented at 4 stages. Right. Now, in the year 2022, they found that we have to make some changes in that. And hence it was revamped. In the year 2022, it was revamped. And after that, this graded response action plan, now it is based on air quality index, not PM10 and PM2.5. Right. Apart from that, it is referred as preemptive. It is preemptive. It means that it can be applied in advance when they find the conditions are going to become worst. So these are the two statements associated with the graded response action plan. Right. Now if you see the data, this is in the year 2017, which was applied at stage 1 when they take the consideration of PM2.5 and PM10. That is respiratory suspended particulate matter, or short we refer them as PM10. Stage 2, stage 3 and stage 4. And in the revamped, we define them into based on air quality index. Air quality index. This is based on revamped. And here it is poor, very poor, severe and severe plus. Understand the differences, the terms seen. Now keeping these things in the mind, we'll try to answer this. Consider the following statements regarding graded response action plan. Statement 1. Graded response action plan has been enforced based on AQI. Now this was not enforced based on AQI. It was started with the PM2 and PM10. Right. As the concentration of PM2.5 and PM10 has increased tremendously in 2020, since then it is enforced by only PM2.5. It is opposite of that. Right. So both the statements are wrong here. So remember that PM2.5, PM10 is replaced by AQI, and now it is preemptive. Then consider the following statements regarding them. So here we talk about the muggers, the crocodiles or the gharials. Now when we talk about the muggers or gharials, in the context of India, we find all the 3 crocodiles are there. If you see the India, we find all the 3 types of crocodiles are there. Right. The largest one is what we refer them as the salt crocodile or saltwater crocodile. It is the largest among all the crocodiles, and according to IUCN status, it is least concern. Least concern. And most of the time it is aquatic. It is aquatic. Now the second species is referred as the muggers. Muggers. Now these muggers, they have broad snots. Broad snots. Snots means nose. Nose. And apart from that, they are confined to Indian subcontinent. They are confined to Indian subcontinent. And if you see the IUCN status of that, they are vulnerable as per IUCN. Now the third category is Gharials. Now these Gharials, they have narrow nose, narrow snots. Narrow snots or nose. Along with that, they also have the bulb above. Bulb. And these Gharials, according to IUCN status, they are critically endangered species. According to IUCN. Apart from that, these Gharials, they show sexual dimorphism. Sexual dimorphism. It means unique characteristics to identify male and females. Males and females. Generally, the males uses this bulb to make noise to attract the female part. So they show the sexual dimorphism. And we find generally both of them, they prefer to stay in the fresh water. In the fresh water, right? So this is about the crocodile which are found in India and their IUCN status. Now moving back to the question. Muggers are critically endangered species found in the Chambal Wildlife Sanctuary. Now, the moment when you see muggers, you have to remember its characteristics. Broad nose, it is Indian subcontinent, and it is comparatively larger, and it is vulnerable. It is vulnerable, right? So, the first statement is wrong. Gharials are cousin species are competing for resources with attacking and even eating the muggers. That is the second statement. Now this is associated with the Chambal Sanctuary or Chambal Wildlife Sanctuary. Chambal Wildlife Sanctuary, which is along the river Chambal. Along the river Chambal. Now the major problem associated in this Chambal Sanctuary is that the Gharials are being eaten up. The Gharials are being eaten up by muggers, right? So here we find the Gharials are eating or eaten up by muggers. It means that muggers are posing threat to the Gharials. Muggers are posing threat to Gharials. Please remember this, right? Then, high genetic diversity among the mugger population in the Chambal compared with that of Gharials. So we find the third statement is very correct. Because of large amount of restoration and conservation, the number of population of these muggers have been increased, right? Now, the second statement is wrong. Gharial, a cousin species, are competing for resources with attacking and even eating muggers. It is opposite of that. Remember, muggers are eating Gharials. Muggers are eating Gharials, and Gharials are critically endangered. Then, both are found widely distributed in fresh water as well as brackish water. Now here, they are more concerned with fresh water, not with the brackish water. Brackish water you can find in the deltas, estuaries, etc. So the fourth statement is also wrong. So only the third statement is correct. So only one statement is correct here. Sometimes they may ask IUCN categories and the associated phenomenon, right? Chambal Wildlife Sanctuary. Now, Chambal Wildlife Sanctuary, which is in the news, the main reason is that the Gharials are being eaten by muggers, which is one of the major concerns, and Gharials are critically endangered species. And Chambal Wildlife Sanctuary is key protection area of Gharials in India. A very significant one, which is along the rivers of Chambal. Now, this Chambal Wildlife Sanctuary is sharing the area with Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh. Very factual one. Three states: Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Uttar Pradesh. Right. Now, consider the following statement about the mammoth recently in the news. Now, this is associated with something called as carbon neutrality. Now, first understand the concept, then we will move on to the option. Now, in the present context of the world, carbon neutrality has become a buzzword. Now, in the carbon neutrality, it is about making the balance between the amount of carbon dioxide emitted and removed from the atmosphere. That is carbon neutrality or net zero emission in a roughly manner. Now, major things which are associated with the carbon neutrality is that you should reduce the emission of greenhouse gas by moving towards clean energies. That is one aspect. Second one is carbon sequestration. Second is carbon sequestration. Now, this carbon sequestration can be of different ways. One is biological sequestration, where we store the carbon in forests, trees, etc. So we refer that as biological sequestration. This is one aspect. Removing the atmospheric carbon dioxide by removing either by naturally or by artificially. So this is a natural way of removing, where the plants and green plants perform photosynthesis and they absorb that. Now, apart from that, when we use a technology and remove the atmospheric carbon dioxide artificially and store them at somewhere in the depleted oil wells or depleted coal fields, we refer that as geological carbon sequestration. Geological carbon sequestration, where we take it from the atmosphere and then we store them beneath the earth, either in the oceans or a depleted one. So we refer that as geological sequestration, which needs a technology. And many technologies have been introduced here. Among them, the technologies which were introduced, which are generally seen, is one is referred as direct air capture. Direct air capture. Then second one is carbon capture and storage. Now, what is the difference between these two? If we are having an iron and steel plant which will emit the carbon dioxide, and if we are making an arrangement of the plant near the iron and steel plant, we refer that as in situ, or near the source, we refer that as point capturing of atmospheric carbon dioxide. So such type of carbon capturing and storing, we refer that as carbon capture and storage, which is point source. Now, sometimes we place this plant anywhere on the earth to absorb the carbon dioxide. Any place which can absorb the atmospheric carbon dioxide. Such types of plants, we refer that as direct air capture. Any place. And the first direct air capture plant was introduced in Iceland, which is referred as Orca, in the year 2021. And recently they have introduced the largest one, bigger than that, which is referred as mammoth. So this is all associated with innovation, a technology which is introduced in the carbon sequestration. And more specifically, it talks about geological carbon sequestration, removing the atmospheric carbon dioxide artificially by using a technology and then storing either in the depleted oil wells or in the oceans. So please remember. So I'm giving an example of this, the direct air capture and carbon capture and storage. Apart from that, we can also have many methods, like beaks is there, right? So all such methods which have been introduced can be a probable question in the context of your UPSC examination, because every country is moving towards achieving this carbon neutrality. Right. Now, consider the following statement about the mammoth. It is the largest carbon capture plant set up in USA. It is not in USA, it is in Iceland. Now, US is also making all its effort. US is also making all its effort to set up a plant. A project Bison was taken, but it has been interrupted now. It has been interrupted. So USA is also making its effort. Orca is the largest capture plant in the Iceland. Now, Orca was the first one, not the largest one. Orca was the first one, not the largest one. It is based on carbon capture and storage technology. So this mammoth, it is based on direct capture technology. Direct air capture technology, DAC. It means it can be set up in any part. Right? So only one statement is correct here. 1 is wrong, 2 is wrong, and 3 is wrong. Right. Now some write-up of that. Mammoth is the second commercial direct capture plant compared to that of Orca, and it is a direct air capture. Direct air capture. Right. Now, Operation Sama, recently in the news. Now, many questions can be seen, or many developments are seen in the African part. Now, the Sama is associated with the African continent. So, it is saving African wildlife through multilateral assistance, where they have made a significant impact, where they confiscated many species. And out of these species, 69% of the species are there, which are listed in CITES, where the trade of these endangered species is having a potential threat to them. So Sama talks about the saving African wildlife through multilateral assistance, right? And it is United Nations initiative along with the local institutions in that region. Now this is somewhere where you have to remember, sometimes they may give only abbreviations and ask with reference to that. Now apart from that, this is also important if you are reading your current affairs. If you are reading current affairs, maybe a week back or some 3-4 days back. So we come across something called as Casa Summit. Casa Summit. Now this Casa Summit is very important with reference to this Sama. In the Casa Summit, a group of 5 countries of Africa, they are making all their efforts to make sure that ivory trade can start. And this they are going to represent themselves in the COP20 of CITES. And remember, CITES, the Conference of Parties of the CITES, meets once in every 3 years. Once in every 3 years. And now they are proposing that they will be making their points to remove that ban which has been made on ivory trade. So they will be fighting for ivory trade to start. Right. So this is somewhere current affairs plus the data reports are important. So this is recently 3-4 days back where they have made a summit called as Casa Summit, where they will be focusing all their thoughts, all their views in the COP20 CITES. Already COP19 has been done. Now COP20 they will be putting their points, their stand regarding the ban of ivory trade to be reduced or it has to be removed. Right. Now, Operation Sama recently in the news is associated with none of that. None of the above. It is associated with South African part. Right. Now, consider the following elephant species and the matches given. Now, many species, they have changed their categories by IUCN. Sometimes they may ask directly, African forest elephant, yes, it has been classified as critically endangered. African bush elephant, it is classified as endangered. Sumatran elephant, smallest one, is critically endangered. Bornean elephant is endangered. It is endangered. Indian elephant is endangered one. So here 1, 2, 3 and 5 are correct answer. Very factual one. Very factual one. Right. Now if you see the elephants, so this is how they look like. African elephants and the Asian elephants. Now, sometimes when they ask question, the gestation periods of the elephants is highest among all the mammals. Generally, it is 22 months where they give baby or they give birth to the baby after 22 months. And generally, they belong to matriarch family where the female elephant leads that. Now, the recent data about the concentration of elephant population in the world in one country. Highest concentration of the elephant in one country. It is Botswana of Africa. Right. and 60% of Asiatic elephants are in India. 60% of Asiatic elephants are there in Asia. Right. So sometimes they may ask statements with reference to these. Right. So here D is the correct answer. Next, consider the following statements regarding drugs technical advisory boards. Now this is again with associated phenomenon or concept called as bioaccumulation and biomagnification. They talk about banning of the drugs in India. Now this is the term which is associated with bioaccumulation and biomagnification. Now bioaccumulation means where the pollutant enters into the primary consumers. Where the pollutant enters into the primary consumers. And they accumulate more than what they can excrete, which becomes a threat to the primary consumers. And we refer that as bioaccumulation. The intake is more than what they can excrete in the primary consumers. Now these primary consumers, when they are eaten by the secondary consumers, tertiary consumers, then the pollutant, they move from one level to next level along with increasing its concentration. When the pollutants move to the next level along with increasing in the concentration, we refer that as biomagnification or bioamplification. Biomagnification or bioamplification. Now, in the context of India, when we talk about the vultures, so due to the diclofenac drug which was introduced to the cattle to relieve them from the pain, the carcasses of the cattle was eaten by the vultures, and that created a disease to the vulture called as renal disease or kidney failure. And that is the reason why in the beginning, when 99% of the vultures decreased in the western part of India, northwestern part of India, then this diclofenac was banned as the vulture protection and conservation plan. In the beginning it was banned. Right. So it was banned in the beginning, some 15 years back. Now recently, two more drugs have been banned here. And these two drugs, if you see, they are associated with aceclofenac. And diclofenac is already banned. Aceclofenac and ketoprofen. So these are the two drugs which have been banned. So the first statement is wrong here. Highest statutory decision-making body on technical matters related to the drugs. This is correct. It reports to the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. It reports to Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So it reports to this ministry, not to the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Right. So here statement 2 and 3 are correct. Now when we talk about this aceclofenac, you should remember that this aceclofenac is banned because when we use the aceclofenac, it rapidly metabolize the aceclofenac into diclofenac. It means it converts aceclofenac into diclofenac. So metabolize, converting. And this ketoprofen is also banned because it is toxic in nature. Statement 2 and 3 are seen. Now, consider the following statements regarding the mangrove pitta, a bird. Now, this bird, mangrove pitta, is seen in two areas. One is Bhitarkanika of Odisha, then Sundarban of West Bengal. Now, both are mangroves. Both are the areas where mangroves are there. Right. So in the two states, Odisha and West Bengal. Right. And this mangrove pitta is considered as an indicator of mangrove health. It is an indicator species, indicator of mangrove health. Right. And this bird is residential and non-migratory. And non-migratory. And its IUCN status is near threatened. Near threatened. Right. Now this is the facts about the mangrove pitta. Now we'll see the options. It is found in the Western Ghats, more specifically in the Leeward region. It is wrong one. It is classified as vulnerable. So it is not vulnerable. It is classified as near threatened. Near threatened. Then it is found in the Odisha and West Bengal. The mangroves, Bhitarkanika of Odisha and Sundarban of West Bengal. They migrate to the long distance and winter. They are residential. They do not migrate. They do not migrate. So only one statement is correct here. Right. Mangrove pitta. Then it is protected area merging the Penyar, Shikargarh and Kiram wildlife conservation reserves. And this is associated with what we refer that as the Hangal population or Kashmir deer. Now when Hangal population is seen, you should understand that Hangal population or Kashmir deer, it is critically endangered and it is endemic to Kashmir. It is endemic to Jammu and Kashmir, the region. Now, a systematic effort has been done to protect, conserve and breeding of Hangal. Conserve and breeding of Hangal is done. Now this breeding is done in two areas. I'm talking about only the concerned part. It is done in situ breeding and it is done with ex situ breeding. Now in situ breeding is done in its original place, which is Dachingam. Right. And ex situ breeding is done in Tral Wildlife Sanctuary. So one is in situ and one is ex situ. Now this Dachingam birds or Dachingam National Park, it is in different district and Tral is in different district. Dachingam is in Srinagar. Right. And Tral is in Pulwama district. Pulwama district. Now this Dachingam is associated with one more aspect. Here we find the famous Dal Lake is there. And this Dal Lake is tectonic lake. Dal Lake is a tectonic lake. And this is the area which is associated with urbanization. Urbanization. So due to urbanization, this is posing a major threat to the Dachingam National Park. Major threat to the Dachingam National Park. So remember the facts associated with Dachingam National Park. It is in situ, Srinagar and Dal Lake, which is a tectonic lake. And ex situ is in the Tral and it is in the Pulwama district. Now moving down to the questions here. It is protected area merging the Panyar, Shikargarh and sometimes they may not give any districts also. Right. And it functions as a protected wildlife corridor to relic Hangal population in Shikargarh, Panyar and Kiram conservation reserves. The Hangal Conservation Breeding Center was established here in 2011. That was ex situ. Ex situ. And the protected area mentioned here is the Tral Wildlife Sanctuary. Wildlife Sanctuary. Right. So you should be careful in reading the statements and how you can apply them with the objectives which are given to the question. Next, the National Green Tribunal has launched an investigation into the construction of polling station schools and other structures within the protected area. And this is with reference to current affairs of 2024. Right. And the protected area mentioned here is, which is in Assam. Right. So it is Sonai Rupar Wildlife Sanctuary along with Charduar reserve forest. 4 Duar reserve forest. Right. Now, Sonai Rupai Wildlife Sanctuary is also referred as Mini Kaziranga. Mini Kaziranga. Is that clear? So the correct option is B. Now, consider the following statement regarding Midori Prize. Midori Prize. Right. Now the statements are, it is given for contribution towards innovation in the climate change. Now remember, for the climate change, the award given is Change of Momentum Award, which is given during their COP. Change of Momentum Award. Now, hence the statement is wrong. It is given for the contribution of conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. Yes, this is correct one. And this is given during conference of parties of CBD. CBD. Now, you should remember that this conference of parties of CBD meets once in 2 years. So, it is not annual, it is once in 2 years. So, hence, when we say annually, this becomes wrong. Even though it is given maximum to 3 people. Maximum 3 people are awarded, but once in 2 years. Once in 2 years. 3 people is correct, but annually is wrong statement. And this award we set up by IAS Environmental Foundation of Japan. And it is set up by Secretariat of concerned COP. No, it is set up by IAS Environmental Foundation. So the second statement is correct, right? So hence we find 2 and 3 are correct. So only 2 statements are correct here. The correct statement is statement number 2 and the statement number 3. Right. So they may ask questions. So once it was asked on Change of Momentum Award. So this is Midori Prize, Biodiversity, once in 2 years, IAS International, Japan, and maximum 3 people. Right. Consider the following statement regarding Ecomark scheme in India. Now, Ecomark scheme is, it is about environment concern. So it is environment friendly products. Right. And it was introduced in the year 1991. Not with reference to Paris Agreement. So Paris Agreement is associated with International Solar Alliance. It is mandatory for the manufacturer to go Ecomark. It is voluntary, not mandatory. It is voluntary, not mandatory. Then administered solely by BIS, and it is important initiative of life movement. Now, when India introduced its life movement, change in the behavior of individual and the group, it is a mass movement which was initiated by India, right, to adapt or to make their behavioral change with reference to the climate change. So as the initiatives of lives were there, India introduced 2 of its programs. The first program is associated with something called as green pledge or green carbon. So we refer that as something which is referred with the green climate program or green carbon initiative, green carbon program. And the second one is referred as the Ecomark scheme. Right. I apologize. It is not green program. It is carbon credit program of India. Carbon credit program of India. So it initiated the 2 programs associated with that, Ecomark and the green credit program. So hence it is an important initiative of life movement. The 4th statement is correct. It is administered solely by Bureau of Indian Standard. Now it is administered along with BIS, and the another institute is Central Pollution Control Board plus Central Pollution Control Board. So 2 institutions are there. Right. So hence the 3rd statement is wrong. Only the 4th statement is correct. Only 1 statement is correct here. consider the following statement regarding loss and damage fund. It is proposed to assist developing countries that are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effect of climate change in response to economic loss and damage. Now, here it talks about not only economic, even non-economic losses also, right? So it talks about non-economic losses also, like death of a family member, loss of a culture, or sometimes when we find the losses are with reference to traumas, etc. So it takes consideration of even the non-economic aspect. So the first statement is wrong. It is associated with the adverse effect of climate change and extreme weather events only. So along with extreme events, it takes into consideration of slow events. It also takes consideration of slow events like droughts, etc. So even the second statement is wrong here. It is an initiation of UNEP, serves as a member for technical support unit advising the UNFCCC Secretariat. Now, one institution is there which serves as a member of technical support, but it is not UNEP. And the institution which supports that is United Nations Development Board, UNDP. UNDP serves as a member for technical support unit of advising then. Invited the World Bank to host the loss and damage fund for interim period of 4 years. So the third statement is correct. Fourth statement is correct. And contribution to the fund is mandatory. Again, mandatory is not the appropriate. It is voluntary. It is voluntary. So here only 3 and 4th statement are correct. So only 2 statements are correct here. 3 and 4 is correct. Now this loss and damage fund was systematically introduced in the COP 28. Now what is loss and damage fund? Due to the impact of climate change, we always find that the losses are there, economic losses, non-economic losses and all. So in that regard, we made an approach. One is referred as mitigation and second one is adaptation. So mitigation means reducing the greenhouse gas emission over a longer period of a time. Adaptation means adapting to the impact of climate change, like droughts are there, floods are there. So adaptation is also seen. So mitigation and adaptation are the 2 ways where we can reduce the impact of climate change. Now in spite of mitigation and adaptation, when the losses happen, so for that we needed a separate fund. So hence in COP 28, a separate fund was created. Separate fund was created, which is for loss and damage part. Now this is with reference to that new fund, which is called as loss and damage fund. Right. Now, which of the following is most appropriate regarding the Aralkum Desert? Now, Aralkum Desert, the moment when we read, it is associated with a 4th largest water body called as Aral Sea. And Aral Sea is located in the east of Caspian Sea. And this Aral Sea was fed by 2 rivers, Sir Darya and Amu Darya. Now, these rivers were diverted for irrigation, agriculture, and hence the water which entered into the Aral Sea decreased and that converted into a desert. So hence it is an ecological disaster, and we refer that as formed by man-made disaster, not the climate change. Right. So hence the climate change is ruled out. Now apart from that, this desert which is created here, it is a major source of dust and toxic salt here, which is creating major threat to the local people. Apart from that, this dust is also making huge impact on the local atmosphere there. Now when we talk about the dust, they are also the aerosols. They behave differently in different characteristics based on the altitude, based on the albedo, based on their composition, based on whether it is day and night, whether it is day or night. They behave differently. Some of them they are having the warming effect, and some of them they are having cooling effect. based on these characteristics. Now, they made a systematic analysis of the data. They found that during the daytime, the dust of the desert is giving cooling effect. Cooling effect. Then, during the night time, the same dust which absorbs the infrared radiations and which is responsible for warming effect. So, during the night time, it created warming effect. Warming effect. So, fourth statement is also wrong. Fifth statement is also wrong. So, hence it is only a man-made disaster. Only one statement is true here. Now, apart from that, an effort has been done not to restore the Aral Sea. I am repeating, an effort has been done not to restore the Aral Sea, but to plant the forests. To plant the forest. And hence, they are planting the trees like saxaul. They are planting the trees like ephedra. And they are planting the trees like tamarisk, so that the sandstorms can be stopped. Right. So hence they are making an effort not to restore the Aral Sea, but to plant forest in the place of the desert here, so that they can protect themselves and the local environment from the pollution which is released due to the windstorms or the sandstorms during the daytime as well as nighttime. So this is something about the Aral Sea. Right. So by that we conclude this session. Thank you.